I think it's pretty much a universal experience that sometimes trying to improve your social life just isn't fun. There's tons of ups and downs, it's stressful, and sometimes it feels like you just can't improve, no matter how hard you try. So you start trying harder to improve your social skills, to make friends, all that stuff, to get a girlfriend, and what happens? You don't improve. If anything, you go backwards. It gets harder. You're stuck in a metaphorical Chinese finger trap, where the harder you pull your fingers away, the more stuck they get. No matter how hard you try, you just cannot escape. And so you give up, you stop trying, and you resign yourself to a life of loneliness, of not many friends, of maybe not loneliness, but less than you would like. If you're still watching this video, it's probably a sign that you have a mindset that is somewhat similar to what mine used to be. I started off not trying very hard to improve my social life because it was just too hard. It wasn't working. So over time, my self-worth and hope were very low at the beginning, right? Because I wasn't even trying to improve. I'd given up essentially. And my stress though was also low because I wasn't thinking about it all the time. It was kind of just not even in my mind. I'd blocked it out. And at this time, I honestly believed that I just would die not having a wife, maybe not having many friends, maybe one or two. And that just wasn't what I wanted to do with this life. So I decided I was going to start trying harder, even if my stress went up. And so I started trying harder, and what do you know, my stress went up. Along with that, my hope and self-worth did also go up because I saw some progress, but my stress went up by a lot more. So overall, it was kind of a negative. And that's what I mentioned with the issue. It's not sustainable. It doesn't work. And this stress was caused by constantly thinking about how I was going, how I was going to improve next time, what I was going to change, who I was going to talk to, and when you're actively trying to talk to lots of new people and make friends, you've got to juggle the whole thing of like, well, do they like me? Do I like them? And that just takes up so much cognitive effort that all your day can be spent thinking about it. And the stress just goes through the roof. Like genuinely, it became so bad that I was having stress dreams like most nights. And because I was constantly worrying about who liked me and how I wasn't making as much progress as I'd have liked, guess what? My social skills didn't actually improve that much, because when things were going well, when people liked me, I was like, yes, this is amazing. And as a result, I was able to talk to people well because I was happy, I was having fun. But when it wasn't going well, when I was even had the slightest tinge of worry about whether people liked me, I would shut down. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't like socializing with shut down people. So that's why my self-worth and hope didn't go up that much. They went up a bit. It's because my social skills only went up a little bit. And I didn't really make any more friends, as sad as that is. And I knew that stuff had to stop. So I whipped out my journal and I started writing down, what is making me stressed? And what do you know? It was this, it was my social life. It was just draining the life out of me. So I began to adopt this mindset. It was a very gradual process. And as I did that, my stress started to go down. And as I stopped thinking about this just all the time and stopped worrying about whether people liked me as I was talking to them, guess what? My social skills started to improve. And also because I wasn't constantly worrying, my hope and self-worth improved. So this shot up. See, now I have high hope, high self-worth, and I'm not stressed. The stress dreams went away, started having just random dreams where I'm like flying around and stuff again. So the moral of the story, this spotlight mindset helped a ton. We are too focused on the outcomes of making friends, improving our social skills, becoming charismatic, getting a girlfriend, whatever it may be. But how do you actually not focus on these outcomes so much? Like these are the outcomes we're going for. Like I'm socializing so that I can make friends and get a girlfriend. So how do I not focus on making friends and get a girlfriend? It doesn't make sense. Well, lovely viewer, you are correct. You do need to focus on this stuff, but you don't need to focus on it 24/7. You may hear people say like, it's bad to focus on work when you're not at work, right? Especially if you're ruminating about the bad stuff. So why don't you apply that same logic to your social life? Don't think about it. It's obviously easier said than done, but that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that when you do have to think about it, you can kind of focus on certain aspects that make it a lot less stressful. And also rejection doesn't hurt as much. So those are the two components of the mindset. It's like a spotlight, really. The spotlight shines on certain actors on the stage who are doing a play. And in this scenario, the play is your social life unfolding, and the spotlight is your brain. You don't want to have the spotlight on just 24/7 because most of the time there's not plays going on. In other words, you don't want to be thinking about your social life when you're not socializing. It's a waste of energy, it's a fire risk. You don't have lights on when you're not there. You can turn it on at times when there's not socializing going on, but it needs to be quick and it needs to be intentional. If you're making decisions about who you're going to point it at, planning, doing a little warm up, go for it, but don't keep it on more than you need to. And when you do have the spotlight on, don't point it at the worst actor. You see, imagine you're like the person kind of holding the spotlight, right? And you see a play on stage and there's one person who's just like, you're just like, what is he doing? Like he's just messing it up. You're going to naturally want to point it towards him because that's what's jumping out to you. But you need to resist that urge and point it at the best actor, because then everyone watching the play, including yourself, will see it in a good way. And so with your social life, don't focus on the negative stuff, focus on the positive stuff. How do you do this? You turn negatives into positives. So here's some more detail about what this mindset really is. There's 3 parts to it. So not having the spotlight on all the time, that's 1 and 2. And pointing the spotlight at the good actors, not the actor that's messing up terribly. That's point 3. So point 1, reduce the time you spend thinking about your social life. If it's remembering something good that happened, go for it. But just like you would with work, just don't think about it all the time. Like when you notice yourself thinking about it, try and just stop, think about something else, meditate so that you can improve the ability to recognize your thoughts if you want. I personally don't bother meditating, but it would probably help. And also journal, because when you journal, you have your thoughts on paper and there's no need to keep thinking. Point 2, reduce the time you spend deciding. So sometimes I try to just think about who I want to be friends with, or like whether I want to keep going to a certain social event, like my soccer club or whatever. So it will take me hours to decide this stuff sometimes because I'm just stuck. I don't know what to decide. I don't know who to go with. And the thing is, with these decisions that you're stuck on, there is no really right decision. And so by thinking longer, you're not going to get there. I heard a statistic for this exam I tutor, which is that after maybe 2 minutes, I can't really remember, 2 minutes of attempting a question, if you still don't have the answer, there's about a 70% chance that you'll get it wrong. So at that point, it's worth skipping the question. So similarly, if you're stuck on any decision, don't keep spending more time on it because the opportunity cost is messed up. Sure, there's a chance you'll get the right answer. You'll get, a better option, but there's a good chance you're going to spend ages thinking about it. You're going to stress yourself out and you're not actually going to get anywhere. So reduce the time you spend deciding by. Every time you notice that you're stuck, just decide, just like that. And remember that there is no right decision. One decision isn't really better than the other, and you just need to keep thinking longer and then you'll work that out. Either option is fine, so just pick one. And also, by the way, often picking the harder option is the right one to do, because if the easier one was the right option, you would have already picked it. Just saying, that's a quote from Alex Hormozy. Okay, now sometimes you are going to think about your social life, and you can't just completely ignore the negative stuff that's happening. So you can't just ignore how, you got rejected by a girl. You're going to think about it at some point, right? Even if you reduce the amount of time you spend thinking about it. What do you do when you have to deal with this? And what do you do when you're scared of what might happen in the future? So, either your ego has been hurt or you're scared it will be hurt. What do you do there? You focus on learning. So you focus on how each mistake you make is actually going to get you closer to your goal. In other words, when you do have to spend time thinking about socializing, it is stressful and it is scary and it is often bad, but you can avoid those things by thinking about how all of it is just contributing to your growth. And that will help you reduce the stress, and then you will actually grow. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you get rejected, you just got practice. You just learned a ton. When you have a really long, awkward silence, well, you've just practiced getting better at not having awkward silences. So all of this stuff, every time you make a mistake, ideally you're learning from it. And when you remember this, the failures don't hurt as bad, and you become less scared of failure in the future. That doesn't mean that you should be not scared of failure at all. It doesn't mean you should just ask out girls left and right, because if you think strategically, the way to have the best success is to, ask out a girl when you actually think you have a chance. So I think most people could do with being less scared of rejection by focusing on the mistakes they're going to be learning from. But, just don't go too extreme. So focusing your spotlight on the actor that is doing well, in other words, focusing on how you're learning rather than just worrying about your mistakes, allows you to become happier because you won't be worried about your mistakes, obviously. Like, you're going to be happier from that. And on top of that, when you turn your spotlight off when there's nothing on the plate, in other words, when you stop constantly thinking about your social life, you're going to become a lot less stressed, like massively less stressed. So when you do this, there won't really be many negative consequences from socializing, and there will obviously be positive ones when you have a win. Therefore, if you do something and it's met with only positive consequences, it becomes addictive. And so you'll become addicted to socializing and you'll improve faster than ever. So real quick, I did mention that if you want to reduce the time you spend thinking about your social life, you should do journaling. It only takes like 5 minutes a day. And I've got a video on how to do it, how convenient. There it is. But regardless, I hope this helped. Have a great day.